How to get dates with women anywhere in the world. So, a lot of my audience is male, and this seems to be a pressing topic, especially for people who want to travel and the people who are wondering how do you meet women in countries which languages you don't speak. And so, I'm going to answer that question in a tactful way to help out the males in my audience. Again, most of my audience is males, so this is for them. It's not going to be for everybody, and I'm totally fine with that. Okay, so men, here we go. First of all, you have to learn the language. I can't stress that enough. Now, if you want to just meet women and have one night stands, I know there's a big culture for that. That's not necessarily me. I find that to be a waste of time. If that's what you want to do, click off this video, first of all. That's not what this is about. But what you'll find is that you can do that if you don't speak the language, but then you don't get the back end of the relationship, so to speak, in business terms. You don't get all of the benefits of getting to multiply that relationships and getting the benefits of, going out and having inside jokes and having experiences and shared laughs. You don't get that from having a one night stand. And you don't get that if you don't know how to speak their language, because you won't be able to make jokes in their language. You won't be able to show off your personality in their language, because speak is a large part of how our personality comes across. Even I'm talking to you now, I would not sound the same in Spanish, but I do speak Spanish. It's just that I don't speak with as much authority in Spanish because I probably stutter a lot more. Pero, my point is, you have to understand at least some of the basics in language. And I'm going to tell you how to do that in a pretty easy way. So I'm going to tell you how I learned Spanish pretty much in 1 year. Okay? This is my tactic. So one, restaurants and cafes. So every cafe, especially the smaller cafes, the people who are waiting there, they're very patient with people because they tend to meet, a lot of people who have coffee and are in business, and people who go to cafes tend to be some of the best people in society. That's just been my experience. They tend to be business people, they tend to be tourists, they tend to be people who are traveling the world and they just want to get work done in a cafe. It's a really good place to meet people. And so then the people who work there, they're used to meeting interesting people. And they're actually used to interacting with people who don't speak their own language. And so speaking with a barista is a really cool way to get at least the environment of restaurant or cafe or dining, that vocabulary under control. That's how initially I learned how to ask for coffee in Spanish, and how to ask for steak, and what wine do you want, and how do you want your steak, and what type of pasta. Because I would go to cafes, obviously there wasn't pasta at most cafes. But I would learn how to speak as many words as possible and ask the cafes, is this how you say, como se dice? Isso. Or, that's Portuguese. I'm in Brazil right now, but así. Como se dice? Así. Or, ¿qué es eso? See? I'm speaking Spanish. However, that's initially how I would do that. Okay, so that's my first tactic. My second tactic, and this is actually a sneaky way. Another sneaky way is to download the dating apps and just talk to people. Now, you don't necessarily have to take out everyone on the dating apps, but the dating apps are a really good way to make friends and go out and meet people. Now, I will tell you, it does help you if you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, which is you want to go and meet someone who does not speak your language at all. That will force you to pick up the language pretty quickly. I know I started this video by saying it won't help you if you don't speak the language. But yes, if someone really likes you, you know what they're going to do? If you make an impression over text by using the translator app and no words, and you're going to start practicing, when you actually meet them in person, here's what you're going to do. You're going to say, no hablo mucho, pero quiero aprender español. Puede enseñarme. And then after that's so what I just said was, I don't speak a lot of Spanish, but I would love to learn. Can you teach me? And so, and my Spanish isn't the best. However, Once you start learning Spanish, once you start talking to them, then you're going to start learning more Spanish, and they will correct you. And then you start to say, hey, is this how it sounds? Is this how it sounds? And then you repeat it over and over again, and they get to practice with you. And the more you see them, the more you get to practice. They also get to learn English. Very cool. So then both of you are actually benefiting, especially if they don't speak Spanish, or if they don't speak, you don't speak Spanish, or you don't speak Portuguese, or you don't speak French, or you don't speak Dutch, whatever the language is, and they don't speak English, then you get to trade languages. And that's really cool. And then in addition to using the translator, having the translator on you, you're going to really pick up a lot of the slang as well, because you're going to hear things that they say, for example, to other people that you would not hear from a translator anyway, which is why I actually recommend this method right here, which is actually going out with someone that does not speak your language. And it's going to be uncomfortable, I know. However, you have to learn the language. But that starts on Tinder, or that starts on Bumble, or that starts on Hinge, or OkCupid, or whatever else is out there by the time that you read this. And then here's the final method that I use. Actually, this is not my final method. But anyway, here's the next method that I use. The next method that I use is repeating. Here's a trick to understanding language. Language is like music. It's like music. And so the sound of words is more important than understanding what that word means. Just think about language as a whole. Right now, I'm just making a bunch of sounds, and you're processing that the sounds I'm making have meaning. But it's just sounds. So your goal is to mimic the sound of what you're hearing more than to understand how it's spelled, or how it's written, or whether it's correct grammar. You just want to know what the sounds are. Here's the beautiful thing about this method, is that once you're learning how the sounds are in that language, once you actually start speaking it more fluently, you're going to start to combine phrases as if it's music. Let's say it's this phrase and then that phrase, but you're going to talk in complete phrases, which is actually how we talk in English or in any language. We talk in phrases like that, right? So then it's buckets. So then once you start learning like that, instead of word for word, then you actually sound more fluid. And then your tone or your dialect or your pronunciation will be that much better. So then now you're learning in phrases, which is more natural, but then you're also learning in dialect. You're learning how it sounds. So then when you start to speak, people will say to you, oh, you sound like your Spanish is really well. Your Spanish is really good, right? You speak Spanish really well. I can hardly speak English, goddamn. But they're saying essentially not that you know Spanish well, or you have been practicing or whatever. Yes, you have. But what they're essentially saying is that your pronunciation and your dialect and your intonation in the words are really good. That's what makes language flow. For example, in English, when I want to ask a question, I do, and I raise the end of my question. Now, in most languages, that's the same. However, how weird would it sound if I did this? It's not really a question in English, right? That's not how we ask most questions. And it would be slightly confusing if that's how you pronounce the words. But again, if you learn it like phrases, then you'll hear how that sound is pronounced or is said in most contexts. That's a really cool hack, which is why I wanted to save it for the end. So, again, I'll recap. One is that you're going to go to cafes, restaurants. Second is that you're going to go on Tinder dates or Bumble dates or Hinge or whatever with people who don't speak your language. Very important. Men, telling you this works. You can start off translating. Just let her know, obviously, that you don't speak a lot of Spanish or Portuguese or French or whatever. And then actually go on the date, have, offer to teach her some English and you learn some Spanish or French or whatever. And then the last is actually repeating how it sounds when people say it back to you. So then if someone says, como se dice, That's not how they say it in Spanish. It's actually como se dice. Como se dice, that sounds like how they would say it in Spanish, which is how we would say, what is that's how someone would say it in Spanish. It's not pronounced, what is this? That's not how we talk naturally, right? So you understand, again, you want to get the flow and the musicality of the language, because really, music is a language, and language is full of music. Even when you talk, having breaks, that's staccato in music. Or legato is when we talk very smoothly and we have an up and we have a down, and we talk quietly and we talk a little bit louder. Language is full of that, and it's a beautiful thing. So then if you use your voice to actually show forth your personality, I promise you won't have a problem finding dates in any language. But focus on the language first. By the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, a lot of you are watching, but you haven't subscribed. What's up with that? Also, if you want to keep watching, there's more videos right here. So why not keep watching? I'll see you next week.